My name is Finn, and this is Game On's Lesson 12 on policy. Throughout these lessons, we tried to better understand the present and future climate crisis and the history of its causes. But when did people start trying to do that? When did we decide that this was an issue that needed to be addressed? Scientists have been sounding the alarm for decades, and the anger and frustration of indigenous peoples around the world have been ignored for even longer. Awareness of the climate crisis has been building for generations. The history of international policy responses is much shorter. In 1992, the United Nations held a conference in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, called the UN Conference on Environment and Development. This is usually referred to as the Rio or Earth Summit. Rio marks the beginning of large-scale cooperation, however limited, towards addressing climate change. Documents like the Rio Declaration and Agenda 21 represent an important change in principles towards accepting the need for more sustainable future development. In measures like forest principles and the Global Environment Facility, we can see the start of more practical measures. The Rio Convention actually refers to 3 different agreements, which respectively tackle biodiversity loss, climate change, and desertification. This second one, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, is particularly important. This is the origin of the Conference of the Parties, or COP. Since 1995, the COP is the event you're most likely to have seen covered in the news when politicians are discussing climate change. Every year, representatives from all UN member states meet up and try and agree on new rules and projects that will help them meet the goals set out at 1992's Rio Summit. Despite meeting every year, the COP didn't produce any universal, legally binding treaties throughout the 1990s or 2000s. While many people wanted change, successful action requires everyone to be on board, and achieving the consensus needed to tackle climate change is very difficult, especially when industrial lobbyists want to slow things down. In 2015, the Conference of the Parties made a big step. COP21 produced the first legally binding universal treaty on climate change, the Paris Agreement. 196 parties committed to limiting global temperature change to under 2 degrees Celsius, with a stretch goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. Finally, progress. But the Paris Agreement is not a law in the way you might think of local or national laws. Much of the agreement is non-binding, with countries only required to let other parties know what progress they are or aren't making. If countries do keep to their obligations, what does that mean? National governments play an extremely important role in tackling climate change. They're meant to incentivize green development and research, disincentivize polluting development, and align these goals with their other responsibilities, like supporting jobs, health, and well-being. The parties of the COP also include international organizations. These groups help with the numerous technical, financial, and training challenges that come with trying to make the whole world work together. These groups don't have the authority or resources that countries do, but they provide continuity and coordination, a forum for other, often more powerful groups to meet and negotiate. In these spaces, they also represent and support less powerful groups, countries and groups of people who would not be given a voice otherwise. In the democratic world, the power and legitimacy of a government comes from the people it represents. We call these people, you and I, that can vote governments in and out of power, the civil society. Civil society has to make it clear to governments that climate change is a priority and that there are consequences for leaders who ignore or abandon their commitments. Civil society has to be responsive. If policies are implemented badly, civil society can ask for accountability. And if policies ignore the well-being of people without political power, civil society can empower them and represent their issues. Is this combination of parties working? Again, the answer is complicated. Many countries are working hard to achieve net zero by 2050 and increasingly finding ways to work together and meet that goal. Investment in climate resilience and green technology is growing, and the power of the fossil fuel industry to slow progress is diminishing. In the face of this, climate change is not going away. More state support for climate causes is still needed, and many environmentally damaging industries are still trying to go about business as usual. They're just getting better at hiding the damage. Increasingly, it's civil society leading the way towards net zero. More and more youth movements, better informed consumers, and companies concerned about losing their business are passing the pressure to adapt onto other decision makers. Hopefully, this pressure is translated into more powerful environmental law. Many powerful decision makers only respond to changes in the law, so tackling pollution, environmental protection, and other climate concerns through legislation is very important. The European Green Deal is one product of that effort. Legal accountability is often really difficult in climate matters. Due to the global nature of climate, the most damaging polluters often affect the whole world at once, but effective legal cases have to be studied by lawyers in one specific place. There is some evidence that this is changing. In 2021, the oil company Shell was found guilty in Dutch court of not properly trying to reduce its carbon footprint. As a result, Shell faces specific legally binding consequences. This is an unusual outcome, but it could be a sign of things to come. Some environmental advocates want willing destruction of the environment to be considered a specific crime, and outcomes like this Dutch ruling would be the first step. More immediately, the EU is pressing on with the European Green Deal. By tackling agriculture, industry, transport, biodiversity, and energy all at once, the European Commission aims to make the EU climate neutral by 2050. This is where those obligations come back in. Like we discussed earlier, effective climate action means everyone needs to do their part. The EU, as an international organisation, trains, coordinates, and helps to distribute funds amongst its members. The member states and their national governments plan out how they're going to meet their obligations and then implement policies that support that plan. And civil society seeks out the problems that governments can't or won't. Citizens can work together to make climate neutrality easier in their own lives. When their elected representatives waver, they can vote for other representatives who represent their interests in a better way. So, if this is what we want to do now, what will policy try to do next? The short answer is more of the same. The progress we have made needs support and consolidation, and good climate policy will make these changes easier to implement. Many corporations and other powerful groups still need to be convinced of their responsibilities, and policymaking, with pressure from civil society, will be an important part of that. After decades of inaction, politicians and policymakers have a lot of catching up to do. But the goal of sustainable policymaking isn't just to not lose. Ultimately, the goal is to win. Good policy will stand the test of time. If we can pass the test that we have set ourselves, a race against droughts, storms, and rising seas, sustainable policymaking will change our relationship with the planet for the better. It will take a lot of hard work, but the game of climate change is winnable.